What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is the show where we teach you to make massive income, not just passive income, through real estate.
It's hard every time.
It's hard every time. Dude, we need to have our taglines. People know.
I like it, dude. It's a good tagline.
So if this is your first time here today, this is Wednesday. This is the Mike and Dan show, and I am Mike DeHaan with my co-host here, Dan Austin. And we talk about real estate investing, business, and how to make money, just kind of in general. So we have a lot going on, and we are currently going for the full real estate entrepreneur bingo here. Getting like the full like blackout card.
I was just gonna say, like, that's how my daughter plays bingo. It's only blackout.
Oh yeah, I mean you don't want the game to end, right?
Yeah.
So we're currently dealing with a situation. We have a lending business, like so many other real estate people end up building out as you kind of like vertically integrate businesses along with your primary business. And we are currently facing our first foreclosure, which I am not excited about by any means. But it will be one more piece of experience that we are checking off of the real estate tool belt. So, you know, if you
Not
look
one
at
I was hoping to check off.
No, not one I was ever hoping to check off, right? Yeah. So if you look at like the theoretical real estate bingo card, trying to get a blackout, so many things you have in there, right? You have like wholesaling a deal, you have flipping a deal, you have like an eviction, you have what else do you have? Like a land development. You could have,
We haven't done that yet. We've got a land subplat. We've done that before.
Subplat, yeah. You could have
seller financing or creative financing.
Ooh, there you go. Sub 2, creative finance.
Own.
We should create this as like a thing, and then you have to see how many you check off on the box.
It's the bucket list challenge. It's like one of those, like you see like like the Karens will post online, like put a check mark next to every state you visited, and they post it and they're like, oh, I've been to Alabama.
Yeah, but like bingo is cooler. The problem is when someone's so desperate to get a bingo that they're giving like junk loans so they can hit the foreclosure box.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage that. I mean, this is one of those situations too for the foreclosure stuff. It's like you I don't know if I want to say this, but like you kind of like reap what you sow type situation. But it's like, you know, we're in the business of lending. Inevitably, certain things are going to happen. Just like when you're in the business of landlording, if you don't have a horror story, you just haven't been in it long enough. And so it's just one of those situations where we actually wholesaled the deals. So we found them, got them under contract, wholesaled them. So we knew the deals were good. And the operator we had vetted. I mean, it's a good operator, good enough at the time, but things have changed since then, and it's just not going to work out. And now you're on kind of like this weird situation where you want the person to be successful. Absolutely, right? But then also you can't wish that they're successful or hope that they're successful and not do anything to protect yourself.
And it's actually been a very interesting sort of like experience going through this, because there's kind of this stigma that when people face things like foreclosures or pre-foreclosures, that they are kind of like bad people, that they are, you know, ill sort of like minded, right? Or they're like not well intended with everything. Whereas I will say, I do think that this guy is a good person. He's generally a good person. I do think he has good intentions with what he's trying to do. He just got himself, you know, over his skis a little bit, and he's in a situation where he has to make a choice, right? And we gave him several options about how to approach this. We said, you know, you can either like pay us a penalty right now, then we can work with you to list the properties and get these things moved. We said you can deed the properties over to us in lieu of foreclosure, or we can go and we can do a foreclosure process. Like, it's fully up to you. And sunk cost bias, you know, pride, whatever you want it to be, he has decided he wants to go the ugly route for some reason. Or I will say, rather than that, we had like a Zoom call. We were kind of in agreement. Turns out he doesn't have the money to even like pay us the penalty and stuff that we need to get things together. And, you know, instead of going the easy route of deeding it over, he's decided he wants to try and race the foreclosure process and get the deals done before we can take action.
Right. And this is funny about the whole situation is that this was supposed to be like a 2-week loan.
Originally,
and we had to restructure it from the first initial loan, which was just kind of gap funding, he was waiting on some other funding. So we just kind of covered that gap funding. The funding never came, and the loans started getting really expensive. So in his favor, we restructured it because it's, in my opinion, the right thing to do. And even with that restructure, we just weren't able to get it across the finish line in time. And it goes down to making sure that you, as a person loaning money, you have to start the process is like, this is kind of why we're here, is like start the processes so that you can cover your downside. Because if it's like with a tenant, I'll use that relationship again. Like you have a tenant that keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, they're going to just keep taking. You give them an inch, that you give them a mile, and in your heart, you know it's the wrong thing to do, but you want to make sure you're being kind and nice to them, and they end up taking advantage of you, not because they wanted to, because that was their only option.
Mm-hmm. Totally right. And that thing is, this comes down to, it's business, right? Mm-hmm. You know, even though you fully want the person to be successful, like with this guy, I absolutely want to be successful. I mean, I talked to him on the phone, like very cordial. Like when we were on the Zoom call, it wasn't like an us and them thing at all. It was like, okay, dude, how do we get through this?
How do we solve the problem?
Right? We came up with a solution. He wasn't able to execute on his side of it. And you know, it's such a important lesson, I guess, too, in making sure that if you are going to do these sort of deals, that you have all the appropriate paperwork and systems and everything set up for it. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, this started as a transactional loan, right? Or I guess like gap funding was supposed to be for like a week or something like that.
Yeah, it was literally like a week or two.
And there's people that do stuff like that, and they're like, I don't want to like get all the paperwork and all those sort of things.
I've been that guy before. I'm like, let's just make this fast, and it's just like, no, don't do it.
I'll just wire it to your account, and then you can use it to flip the house, whatever. If you did that, it's completely unsecured. We'd be fucked.
Yes, right? Absolutely. Like if you trust the person, you're like, let's just get this done. They need it real fast. Mm-hmm. You can get yourself in a ton of trouble, because then when that person's up against the wall, fight or flight, and they're like, hey, I know that you have no recourse, so now I'm in control, which not in a bad way, but they can take the time and make a decision that's as beneficial to them as possible, where it may not benefit you because you have zero recourse if you don't do it right. And so even when we do funding, and this is just for anybody looking to do any type of funding, or maybe in the future, or you're looking for funding, like on double closes, doing the right thing as the person getting the loan, as a lendee, like getting the right paperwork in order, because you'll go to some title companies. We work with several title companies across the country where they're like, what do you want to do? No, we can't do that. And in reality, it's because they don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that you get the promissory note, the deed of trust, or the mortgage, depending on what kind of state you're in, all the insurance stuff, like all of the proper paperwork to do a loan in order, and getting them to understand what that's for, even if it's for 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's going to cost $500 to $600 to have it drafted, maybe more, take a little extra time, but things happen, because we've had, stuff where we've wired money and it doesn't close when you think it's going to, and it's 2 weeks later, and it happens more often than you would think.
Yeah. And people get cheap about stuff, right? But it's an insurance policy. And here's a great thing. If you're a lender, you don't have to pay that. Make your borrower pay it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just part of the cost. Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, you're going to make me pay this? I'm like, yeah, I am, because I want to insure my money that I'm giving you to be able to do this deal. And you're still going to pay me the point, or, whatever our agreement is, because that's what happens when you're the borrower, is you are kind of at the mercy of what the lender wants to charge you if you just choose to work with them.
Totally.
So anyway, checking off that on the bingo. I don't know if we have, we already got a lot of other like weird, like fringe bingo spots checked off too over the years. We got like Landlord Panic getting into a fist fight. We have a, property owner getting kidnapped from a sale. We have a body found in a property. We have, what else?
Wait, which one did we have that one in?
So we didn't buy that one. No, it was out in like the valley. If you remember, we have like the photo of the like the body print, like after it was like cleaned up. Yeah,
I was thinking you're talking about the apartment we flipped that had 2 dead bodies in it over the time of ownership.
Yeah,
the same unit. That was
we
different.
Never had to deal with that though.
Yeah, the authorities dealt with it.
The murderer that lived there.
The transients. We had a van that was basically rented out in the parking lot of that building, and it was so funny in that one. As I digress here, I was talking to one of the tenants in that, and he's like super pissed off and all hot and heavy. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, my ex-girlfriend broke into my apartment. And I'm like, what are you, like, really? And he's like, yeah, she came in through the back door. And I was like, dang, that sucks. And he's like, yeah, she lives out in that van out there. And I was like, there was like a van with like 4 crackhead transients in it. And I was like, are you serious? Like, and he had like a 10-year-old daughter, and like, it was just this weird situation. I was like, golly.
There was some freaky shit going on in that.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
But anyway, major digression there. But,
yeah.
Well, outside the foreclosure though, stuff's been going good. I've been super stoked about how the instant investor program's been going along well. Just like seeing some of the guys really start to hit their stride in there has been super fun. We're prepping for KeysCon here, but I guess like when this episode comes out, it'll be next week, which is crazy.
Oh wow, yeah,
that's coming up real fast.
Excited, dude. I am so pumped. That's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah, I've been bringing some great speakers though. We had Amanda Cruz come on today and talk about mobile home parks, which was a really great call.
That was legit.
I love just like having this platform and having this podcast in general. Like it gives you the ability to talk to like true operators without like them necessarily expecting anything in return, just because they want to like come on your platform.
Absolutely. And the interesting about her too is like we get the exposure to a person like Amanda who like legit, you can tell like she kicks ass because she shared way more information about how to do mobile home parks than you hear on any other podcast, even a mobile home park podcast. You just don't hear that quality of information and the experience level coming from her. Like she's on the ground doing it. That's cool.
So if you guys missed that, she was on what episode was it with ours? Let me look here really quick. It was like 147. Yeah, episode 147. So just like a month or so ago.
Yep.
So she came and did a talk, which was great, and then we've had several other folks that are starting to line up some like massive deals. One guy's doing like a big land development deal on Lake Court Lane, which is going to be awesome. That's
gonna be sweet. I'm trying to buy one of those.
I know, right? Yeah, it's been fun. I guess like building out our own tribe as well as like being involved in other ones.
It's like anything too. Like it takes a while to build and to really curate what the vision is, and then the tribe kind of takes it over, and then they just kind of make it their own. And it's been really cool. Like tons of engagement, which is the best part.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been super excited about that recently. And then I guess like on the wholesale sort of side, I mean, stuff's been fine. It's funny, I guess like by traditional Octobers, this has been our slowest October that we've had. Not necessarily in terms of like deal flow, just lots of push off from sellers right now. I think that the nationwide crunch of housing and affordability right now is going to start to reach a tipping point here really soon, because we're starting to have more and more people all the time who come out, they say that they want to sell, but they're just like literally not able to because they have nowhere to go. And I don't know what is going to ultimately happen. Right, because like there's literally people that we talk to almost every day that they like need to get out of their property, like they are going to lose it because of some sort of situation in their life, but their options are either to sell, get out of that situation, and then probably end up homeless because they can't afford to buy a new house, they can't afford to rent anything, they can't like get approved to rent anything if they have bad credit, or they can stay in the house for another 3 months and then get kicked out because the debtor will come and take the property from them, right? And so, like, I don't know what is going to give. Something has to along the way, but it's become like one of our most common conversations is like, thanks so much, I just don't know where I'm going to go. Or like people be like, I will sell to you only if I can like stay here. This is how much I can afford, right? Which makes it impossible to do business because we're not a charity. Right. And it's just such a tough deal right now. Like, I don't really know how things are going to improve from there.
Yeah. I'm still pretty bullish on like the single family and small residential stuff. It's interesting listening to others talk about like multifamily, talking about maybe it's like 10 to 15, maybe even in some areas 20% off of its height. So there's some opportunity now to step into multifamily. So I don't know where investor money will go. And I really love watching Aaron Amuchastegui. If you don't follow him on Instagram, I think that's his handle. It's like Aaron Amuchastegui. Yeah. Look him up. It's GUI on the last three. Anyways, talking just like he's posting a bunch of stuff about just like offices, which we've all kind of understood, like it's been in the media, but like offices stuff's like really starting to go into crunch. Like he posted one today, like a fully occupied office space and the lender's still foreclosing on it and choosing to not re-up or extend the debt because they just want to get any office off their books.
Isn't that crazy? Like
what?
Fully
You would have never thought that. Like high rise. We're talking a high rise.
Yeah, and so I guess the reason that they're doing that is because there's the balloon payment coming up,
right?
And typically,
which is typical on a commercial debt.
Yeah, when you get these commercial loans, typically there's the balloon payment that comes up, and what you do is you go to the lender and you say, hey, cool, we want to reassess the property, you give us the new rate, do all those sort of things, and then we go from there. But they are just choosing to not even have that conversation.
Yeah, because they want it off their book. They want to clean up their balance sheet going into 2024. So you see that crunch. We know that's happening, and that's a lot of times what people have talked about regional bank issue, right? That's where a lot of that debt sits, whatever that means for some of these big buildings. But then, yeah, having the multifamily kind of coming down and cap rates expanding a little bit. And then residential, like you're saying, it's just so tight. We're still in that, like, I don't know, like just deadlock. Not enough people moving. There's not enough inventory moving. Obviously, there's a supply issue, but then the cost of ownership for the average person is so stinking high. What's going to happen? So you have all these asset classes that are kind of like expanding, and some of them, like office, falling apart. So where will investor money go? If it goes into the single family and small multifamily space, it's not going to change what you just explained. People are still going to have a hard ass time finding houses because all the inventory is going to get popped up. And then you have all the build to rent guys and big bankers and hedge funds still getting into the build to rent space. So that creates inventory, but it doesn't really actually create inventory because they're building it and keeping it, or building it and selling it to a fund that's going to keep it. So it's just very challenging in all spaces.
For sure. I mean, what I kind of worry about happening is ultimately all these people, they end up walking away with nothing because they choose to not take the cash offer now and like walk away with some money and go figure it out. Instead, go to foreclosure where they walk away with zero equity. At that point, they just lose all of it. And then who's going to come in at that point is all of the investors who are going to be coming in and, you know, buying for it, you know, probably bidding each other up because the mortgage rates will be low or whatever, and they want to, like, you know, buy it over other people. And then you have all the lien holders, the banks getting paid off, plus you have all the extra equity that all these investors are now hungrily bidding each other up on. Who makes all the money in that situation? Frickin' bank, right? After all of it said and done, for their own shady business practices to even get people in these situations in the first place. So
those are terrible lending practices.
Yeah.
And I think investors are continuing to drive the investment and real estate acquisitions in the small single family space anyways, and so that would just extend that further if you have that situation, right? And so it just doesn't fix the problem. But all I think about is like, how do I buy more? And talking to a lot of people, they're like, I don't know how. Right now,
like it's just hard.
I don't know how.
Especially with lending rates and things like that. Like, it has to be some sort of creative financing, or it has to be just like an insane deal that's very, very hard to find. But
you can find them, and they're just not. I think the challenge is like, it's if one is good, more is always better. It's like the idea. So why can't I have more? And we've been so used to that, of like having an abundance, that now it's like, okay, you have to be able to sit on your hands for a minute and let that next deal come, as opposed to trying to force it, which we've been talking about all year. But it's like, seems like at that point, and now I'm just hungry to do a deal, but that's not the time to do one.
I know, that's it. Or it is the time to do it. It's time to make sure that they're still good deals, right? Because
they're still valid.
Like honestly, one of the things I'm seeing is there's this huge wave right now. So back in 2021, the big wave of like all the people who didn't quite understand what they were doing, they were all doing these like wholesale deals, right? So they were buying these properties that were like pretty poor deals. They would go in, they would pay way too much for it, and then they would basically just like replace the carpet, if that, and then try to sell it for like a higher
caulk
price.
in all the cracks.
And
good.
Yeah, and they were literally just chasing the appreciating market, because every month it would be worth more and more than it was before. Now, what I'm starting to see is this rise of just dummies that are chasing cheap debt, like in terms of like buying sub twos or buying these other shitty deals that all these you know, Pace Morby dorks send out across the Facebook pages, that are like these deals that it's like you're paying above retail price and they always advertise it like, buy a 3% interest rate in Post Falls, whatever. Like that's the selling
Are you
point.
talking about somebody specific?
I would never talk about a 2.875 interest rate deal, single family in Post Falls or whatever they sent out the other day.
With like an $80,000 fee on it.
Yeah, well, exactly, right. But that's the whole thing, is you're paying retail price for the property, and then the seller decides they want to have their cake and eat it too. So they're also having a second position, which
Gotta
now
have
makes
that
it
second position.
So you're extra leveraged on it.
Gotta do the Morby method, dog. Otherwise, you're not going to be in the group anymore.
It's so dumb. And then the entry fee to like as the investor get into it is like $50,000. So you're paying a large amount of money to get into a property for above retail price to get a debt that even with that debt with the second position is cash flow negative. And my favorite thing is like, oh, this deal is only for people that have a long-term outlook on building their wealth and aren't trying to make money right now. They're just speaking buzzwords to all the dumbasses who don't understand how real estate works because they're like, I want to be a long-term guy.
Yeah,
You know,
look at all
I'm
that
trying to
equity
build
in
wealth
there.
over my life. Yeah, I don't need any equity because I have that cheap debt. Look at my pay down every single month. It's just so freaking dumb. Because what's ultimately going to happen is the market turns over. All those people are now underwater.
100% underwater.
Rental rates come down. They cannot cash flow at all. Now it's a massive liability. That second balloon, that second interest only payment, whatever, with the freaking seller that's due in 5 years, that ultimately comes due, and you have no way to even pay that back because you have no equity in the freaking deal. Like, it just creates a mess for everyone, and there's nobody that wins.
If you're wholesaling it, who cares that the seller's going to lose their ass and the buyer's going to lose their ass?
See, and that's the other situation too, is now you have the wholesalers that are washing their hands of the entire giant pile of spaghetti that they just mixed up.
I don't know how you make that pitch, like when you're trying to be ethical, especially if you're like a godly man of the cloth, and you're trying to like be an ethical wholesaler, and you go into somebody and you get them locked up on sub 2, you get them with a seller carryback, and you're like, we're gonna take care of this, and we're gonna sell it to some other random person you're not gonna get to underwrite. Is that the conversation, or is it that you tell them that you're going to do it yourself and you're keeping it and you're taking care of their problem?
It is. Well, right. So that's like what wholesalers get a lot of flack for, is we don't always disclose the fact that we're finding another buyer. But it's even worse when you're wholesaling these sub 2 deals because the seller is still responsible for the debt, but now you are passing off that responsibility to some other freaking person. That has not been vetted at all, and they have no idea.
That's my biggest problem with that. Not that you can't or shouldn't do that, because I think that is an opportunity, but it's like at some point you have some ethics in the game where you have to do the right thing, and that might not be what's the best thing for you in that situation.
Totally. And there's an issue with the people that are buying these deals. There's the issue of people that are wholesaling these deals. And in my mind, this is the thing that, like, in 2 years, just like we look back at the wholesale people in 2021, and you're like, those dummies, when they all lost their ass in 2022.
Right.
We're going to be looking at the exact same thing in 2024 and 2025, and looking back right now and be like, wow, those people were stupid. Why were they buying this?
They're just like grabbing 5 houses on sub 2, and they're just going to lose all their butts because they're like, well, I'll just be able to sell it. Nope.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Well, the worst part is too, because the debt still stays tied to the seller. Not only does the person on title lose the property, but the sellers are the ones that get wrecked.
They are the ones that get wrecked because they're the ones still holding the bag, right? The whole due on sale clause, and they're kind of there with the loan when this person defaults because it's still in their name. And I think the biggest challenge with these two is most people are doing them because they're bad deals. And so that's how they negotiate. And typically it's because the seller doesn't really have that much equity, or the equity they had in 2022 is now gone, but they still think it's there. So then the person negotiating the deal is like, yeah, I'll give you that equity on like a carryback, do this Morby method thing, which is absolutely just trash because the property never actually had that equity at the point of sale anyways. And so now you're adding a premium to it with a person that this deal never actually worked for, and selling it to somebody that's never should have bought it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah,
it's just a bunch of nonsense going on. So I don't know, like you mentioned before, I have people trying to force deals to make them work. That's currently what people are doing because their desire to get a deal done is so high. It's just not the time for that. You still need to have your basic due diligence completed and understand exactly what you're buying when you get into some of these things. And it's a big red flag when I see these people. It always seems to be like, it's, I don't know, like a lady that's like in their 40s that obviously like just learn about real estate, and they go and they post on the Facebook page. They're like, does anyone have any creative deals for sale?
I know.
I'm like, oh God, you're just like begging for someone to come and take advantage of you.
Right.
Come on.
Or I like the person that's looking for seller finance deals, no money down.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, God, it's so stupid. Bro.
Nerds.
I don't know. That's kind of, but like between that and then like just the situation with all these sellers and where they're going to go, all the young investors making dumb decisions, all the very corporate investors letting their $300 million properties go into foreclosure. I think there's a big mess coming, man. Like, honestly, Like if you just look at like the very kind of like macro picture, I think that it's like death by like 1,000 cuts right now, and the cuts are just getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like when will the cash kind of get out of the system? Because there's still a lot of cash in the system, and there's a lot of investors that are also sitting on cash that, that's not in the system, but that they have ready to go. So like, how much will that money be able to come in and kind of keep it from I guess buoyed up, maybe keep it buoyed a little bit, because there are still sophisticated people out there that we know that are ready to buy things. So that's the question I have, because I don't have a question that there's going to be some problems going into 2024. It's just how deep do they go?
Totally. Right.
Because instead of the government having to print money, we all have that money and we're all ready to redeploy it. That's where I think they're having a problem with inflation, is because there's just so much money out there that even though they're talking about like savings rates going down and all that sort of stuff, there's still a lot of people, because all that money went somewhere. Somebody got more wealthy because of it, and it's not the individual person out there. It's investors that were in the game when they were able to extract equity and put it in the form of cash. Companies that were selling widgets that got to sell a whole lot more $1,200 TVs, right? There's still that wealth is still out there somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. I mean, and I think if anything right now, it's like better time than ever to start focusing on your skills and learning to build your pipeline, right? And even if you're not able to close on a lot of the deals that potentially come through, establish those relationships with sellers, right? Because then if the stuff does come around, then you'll be able to make your money. And so that's kind of what we've been focused on. We've had a longer cycle time in terms of negotiations and closings and things like that. Yep. But we're able to do that because we have a pipeline built. We send our mail every single month. We have our SMS team that's working for. We have our back office services program that we're running with people where, we're just like running people's marketing and lead intake for 25 different markets across the country for different investors right now. And that sort of gives us a unique perspective, I guess, to see what a lot of the conversations look like from everyone across the country in every market. And it's the same sort of patterns, but the funny thing is across the entire country, you're starting to see an increase in new leads coming in, but it's a lot of people that are coming with like, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. And so if you're able to build your bucket and really, fill it up right to the brim, when stuff does come over the end, you're going to be the ones there to catch it. So it's time now more than ever to be investing money into getting those leads and having those conversations so that you can be ready to capitalize on things if stuff does get weird.
Right. I like that analogy too, because those leads do come with a value, right? It's like having a book of clients as a sales rep or something like that. Like those leads that you're producing aren't garbage because you didn't close a deal this month. Yeah. You're just getting ready for them to spill out of that bucket and be the first one there to catch them.
Yeah. And I think that's a mentality that when you're starting out, especially if you're first starting out in like off-market real estate, when you're in real estate, right? When you first are like a newer investor, or even if you're not a new investor, but you've never had your own pipeline before, your entire mental process is opportunity, analyze, yes or no, move on. Okay. When you start to do direct to seller, start to generate your own leads, it more comes to, okay, seller conversation, is there even like an opportunity here to begin with versus like this is an opportunity, yes or no? You have to analyze, does it even exist? Right. And then from there, you have to figure out what is the opportunity and how and when can it come together? Not just like, yes or no, I want to do this. And sometimes you're having these conversations with people for 6-9 months. I think our longest, we had somebody that we first connected with for 2.5 years before we ended up buying their property. Yep. Right. And there was a monthly check-in that we did.
This is investing, right? You have to have the long-term vision, the long game. And that goes with anything in your business. Like, don't think just because you spent money didn't pan out that you didn't learn something or earn something, because that's what you're doing as a business owner. You're figuring out things and all that money goes somewhere as long as you have the long-term game. If all you're worried about is short-term gain, you're only looking month-to-month cash flow, it's going to look terrible if you invested in a system that didn't work out or you bought leads that didn't turn into anything that month. It's going to just look like crap, but have that 3, 5, 7, 10-year vision, and I assure you it'll all pay off.
Exactly. And just make sure you're nurturing those people as they come in, put them on like a drip campaign, whether that's call, text, mail, whatever it is. And once you've kind of like broken the seal and they've engaged with your business in some capacity, then it's much easier to continue that conversation. Like, there's a huge reason that like major companies, they still advertise it's purely to stay top of mind. Like Coca-Cola, do you really think that Coca-Cola needs to advertise what Coca-Cola is? No, everyone freaking knows that. They literally are always marketing so that they're top of mind when you're like thirsty and I'm like, oh, I just saw a Coca-Cola commercial. That's what I want to do. What you're trying to do is be on a smaller scale. Once people are familiar with your company, you just need to advertise and stay in front of them. So even though they can't necessarily sell right now, in 9 months when they are completely fucked, you're the first person that they call because you've been communicating with them and advertising to them and showing them your brand on a very regular basis for the last 9 months.
Totally.
Right. And that's going to be the key, I think, to the people that are able to be successful if/when things finally start to turn over and stuff does start to open up again. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know what's going to happen though once we get to that phase. But it might be interesting, especially with what were they? What was Jamie Dimon saying from Chase that like the COVID savings should be gone by December, and we're at like record high consumer debt. So basically, everyone has a ton of debt, and no one has any money, like in terms of like the average person out there. So I think that these problems are going to continue, not even just across real estate, but just across everything else.
More of a consumer recession next year, maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not an economic expert.
Yeah, but and stuff just is getting tight for people as well. It's funny. I was talking to one of my GoPods. We talked about Gobundance last week on the podcast and the meetup that we just went to in Lake Oconee, Georgia, and how I felt like it was all the heavy hitters that were there at the event. And one of my GoPod members actually said something that I thought was very valid. They're like, yeah, you probably got like all the biggest guys because they're the ones that are doing well. There's probably a bunch of guys that are really struggling right now, and they're like, damn, I'm not going to spend, $6-7 grand to go to a week-long conference. Right? Like, I can't do that.
Right. Yeah, you're probably right. They're questioning, they're prioritizing their expenses, but obviously now's the time to actually prioritize that as a value add to you or your business, because that's where you learn how to be successful. That's how you make the next step in your business when you're kind of down and out a little bit, right? Yeah,
exactly. And so, I think side tangent there, but I think just big moral of the story is right now, focus on getting leads coming in the door, optimizing your systems, working on growing yourself and your education. And as tempting as it can be to want to buy deals and, continue your wealth generation and do those all different things, just make sure that you actually know what you're getting yourself into, especially when you're looking at some of these people that are peddling these terrible creative deals, or these lenders that are trying to get you into this 9 or 10% debt with 5-year prepayment penalties, right? Which is a very serious thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, think about it from that perspective. Like, everybody in the real estate industry is transaction oriented. Your loan officer, your real estate agent, your wholesaler, your flipper, like everybody is transaction based. And so you just don't want to be the one holding the bag while everybody else made the money.
Exactly, which can happen, especially if you're the end investor. Everyone made money servicing you to help you buy that house, and they all got their money and they moved on. So when the market starts to turn over, you're the one that's going to get bit at the end of it. So cool. Right on, Dan. Anything else there before we finish up?
No, man, I'm good.
So cool. Well, right on, guys. Well, thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mike and Dan Show. You should give us both a follow on Instagram. I'm at Mike_invests. Dan is at InvestorMan. Dan, we just hired a marketing manager and are starting to throw out some major content on there. So you should give us a follow. Let us know what you think. Even if you think it sucks, just let Dan, just DM him and just let him know that.
Please do. I love that kind of feedback.
He loves negative feedback. He's an Army guy. He just likes to be kicked in the nuts every once in a while. So
yes, please.
Shoot us a follow there, guys. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
See y'all.